everybody, and welcome to the Financial Alliance for Racial Equity's webinar, Embracing Authenticity, Reclaiming the Code Switch. I am Nicole Ridley, Head of Operations, and I will be your moderator today. In today's competitive work environment, authenticity is often sacrificed for conformity. Our webinar today aims to explore how Black professionals have navigated the corporate landscape to embrace their true selves and successfully reclaim their code switch. We have an exceptional panel of leaders who will share their personal stories and insights on this topic. So let me introduce our panelists. Dedrick Jones is the Vice President of Broker-Dealer Compliance Training at Osaic. With over 26 years in financial services industry, Dedrick and his team are responsible for developing and administrating robust training programs to satisfy regulatory requirements. He is also dedicated to mentoring young men through his fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, through their Kappa Lead program and volunteering in the community. Thank you, Dedrick, for joining us today. Up next, we have Giovanni Lucas. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer and Talent Acquisition Officer at Nationwide. Giovanni oversees all corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and has been instrumental in advancing Nationwide's career culture in inclusivity. He also leads talent acquisition and recruitment strategies, ensuring that Nationwide attracts and retains top talent. Welcome and thank you, Giovanni. Next, we have Brian Seymour. He is Chief Executive Officer and founder of Prosperitage Wealth, a fee-only RIA dedicated to closing the racial wealth gap by helping Black professionals make smart money decisions through unbiased financial advice. Brian is a certified financial planner and has been featured in U.S. News and World Report, NASDAQ, and the New York Times. Welcome, Brian. And last but certainly not least, we have Alicia Tennille. She is a venture analyst from Franklin Templeton Strategy Venture Group. She is responsible for fintech research and analyst of activities involving her community and a board member of Habitat for Humanity and the global lead for Franklin Templeton's Black Empowerment Network. I thank all of our esteemed panelists today and thank you all for us joining, and I am looking forward to what will be an engaging and insightful discussion. But before we start, we have the Q&A chat open, so feel free to pop in your questions. I will be monitoring them here and there, and we will definitely get to those as soon as we can. So with that said, let's begin. So we'll start off with a baseline question of, panelists, can you share your personal journey of navigating the corporate landscape and how we can embrace, or how you came to embrace your true self? I will start in no particular order with Brian.
Oh, wow. I never win. No, I really appreciate you having us together here. Really excited about the conversation. I was actually recruited into the financial services industry from another job. And it was funny, I saw it on Facebook. It came back and I had posted before I was going to the interview whether I should wear a bow tie or not. And I was looking back through the thread and they're like, no, it's more conservative of a industry. You should probably wear a necktie. You should probably do this. And I remember even before I started, I was very cognizant of how I presented and how people would judge me based on that. It took quite some time before I became really comfortable. And when I say a long time, I mean, it is something that I'm still becoming comfortable with. I remember there being one other Black advisor in my office. And at one point, he pulled me aside and said that I wouldn't be able to be successful in the industry only working with Black advisors. And so, or only working with Black clients. And so now when I look back at how much of a struggle I had even being clear in my firm now of what my mission is to close the racial wealth gap, it is still something that I struggle with. it is still something that trying to stay true and authentic to who I am at all times is difficult, but um, organizations like this, a community like this helps me to lean into my more authentic self, as you can see by my background.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your story. And Giovanni Lucas, tell us a little bit about your story and how your personal journey was in corporate America and really being comfortable with being your authentic self.
Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. And again, thanks so much for FAIR hosting this panel. So my journey began 29 years ago, actually more than 29, 31 years ago. I was an intern with Nationwide and in the mailroom of our Syracuse, New York regional office. And I remember that first day on that internship and how excited I was, one, to get a check for the summer, but also to be exposed to the Nationwide culture, with which one of caring and one of support. Now, I'll tell you, I didn't see anyone in that mailroom that looked like me. And so what I had to learn quickly is how do I navigate? And so the good thing is that I had some coaches in college at the time who were providing the counsel and guidance in terms of how I show up and how I learn and ask for help along the way. And I think as I've progressed through my career, one of the things that I have always uh, felt that's very important for anyone to do is to create a board of directors around them, individuals who are trusted advisors who can provide them with perspective and feedback. And for me, having a group of mentors and coaches who I called my trusted advisors helped me navigate the corporate culture, helped me find my own language, so to speak, allowed me to accelerate how I develop. And many of that experience and that learning came from on the job training, right? And so there were times where I made mistakes and had to learn from those mistakes. But the journey has been filled with individuals who took the time to invest in me and provide me with feedback. And sometimes I'll be honest, during my journey, I was not necessarily mature enough to receive it.
Mhm.
So there are times in your journey that you have to mature to receive and digest and actually deploy what it is you were advised on. And I think that's something that all of us can. I know I did, and certainly I think all of us can take into consideration that some feedback we might not necessarily understand or appreciate today, but we will as we explore through our journey. So that was my journey in a nutshell.
And I don't mean to break up the line of questioning here, but Giovanni, I do just want to take a moment to double click and kind of peel back the onion on something you said for maybe someone who is in our audience and is struggling with that, that level of maturity. When you said that you have to be mature enough to receive
Mhm.
that feedback, what did that look like? And for anyone who is in that space where you were, what are some tips maybe that helped you kind of overcome that and have that mature mindset to say, okay, let me soak this all in?
Right. Yeah. So thank you for the double click. I think for me, as I was growing in my career, one of the things I did not always appreciate, right, is the attention to detail, and ensuring that everything that I did, I double checked, I triple checked before I delivered it. Uh, Being younger, I'm like, I got it. I know what I'm asked to do. I'm going to execute. I'm get it done. Didn't value double checking and triple checking, and for that matter, having others look at what I was going to present before I presented it. And it wasn't until I presented what I thought was a fantastic program that I learned, no, it had a bunch of errors. And I got that feedback. And so I think for all of us, uh, one, you have to be open to feedback. Feedback is a gift. You should always open your gifts, even if the gift that you receive you might not necessarily like, but you open it, right? Because it will provide perspective. Number two is you absolutely should deploy what you learned, right? So if that gift was given, you unpacked it, read the gift, engage with the gift, and while you might not understand the gift today, it might make sense later on. And so I think it's always important we live in and we all work in communities that are multi-generational, right? We have more generations working together in the workplace than we ever have, right? And so part of that experience is for us to put our arms around it, learn from each other, right? Respect the experience that has come before us and the experience that sits alongside us, and deploy what we hear. So for me, it really was pausing, getting the feedback, understanding and appreciating what my viewpoint was not always relevant, and seeking that guidance and that perspective. And certainly when I took that in and deployed it, what you learn quickly is that feedback is truly a gift, and those who give you a gift care enough about you. And that's another tidbit of advice I would give, is that the gift givers care enough to provide a gift.
I say in my next life, I'm going to start a t-shirt business, and it's just because I love a good quote. And so what I'm putting down for my t-shirt business is feedback is a gift. Always open your gifts. I feel like that's going to be on a t-shirt. So thank you for that little nugget. We'll go to Alicia. Tell us a little bit about your journey in becoming your authentic self.
Thanks so much, Nicole and Morgan and everyone at the FAIR team for the opportunity. And it really is just an honor to be amongst these gentlemen here who have done a lot in the industry as it relates to bringing diversity to the forefront. So it just really is an honor to be here. And to answer your question, I feel that my journey in the professional landscape has been a journey, for sure. Has definitely been a road with different bumps that were, some are expected and some unexpected. I think as a Black woman in particular, one of the elements that stood out the most for me in my journey of navigating the corporate landscape is around Black hair. I grew up in an environment where I was taught and it was fed to us, you will not be able to succeed well in a corporate environment or space unless your hair is straightened. And so it was very much if you're going on vacation and you want to wear your braids, take them out before you leave, before you go back to work, so people don't know kind of that you have them in, because maybe that's not as professional. And so I grew up thinking that and believing that. And I think that, it took me some time to even as I was entering the workplace, to believe that, showing up to work and going natural, that all happened to me while I entered the workplace, was a part of my identity, and being bold enough to show up without having to feel the pressure or the fear of not wearing my hair straight or a certain way. And I think that joining and being really involved and engaged in our Black Empowerment Network at work really helped me with that, as I saw other colleagues wear their locks to work, wear their protective styles to work. And it was an opportunity to educate my coworkers about, what the nuances and the diversity and the beauty around Black hairstyles. And it was out of my comfort zone, because I had worn my hair straightened for my entire life, permed and relaxed. And I think that having the freedom and the boldness to show up authentically in that way was something that I wasn't expecting to have to experience, but I think it did help me prepare to be a little bit more authentic with myself at work.
Thank you for sharing that. And the one reason why I wanted to bring this topic to the forefront was, when we talk about reclaiming, it's really the transformation of the code switch, right? And Alicia, what you said about, the hair conversation, I remember many moons ago when I was entering into the workforce, those were topics of conversation, like, oh my God, I just got this interview, my hair is not pressed, or I might have braids, like, what do I do with it? Like, it was a whole conversation moment around how am I going to get this hair together, right? Because I can't come like this. But when you were telling that story, I was reflecting on, like, when is the last time I've had that conversation? It's been a minute where I was concerned about, oh my God, now I have braids. What do I do with it? Now it's like, oh, I have braids. Am I going to wear my braids up? Am I going to wear my braids down? Am I going to like pull it back? My naturals hair is out. Do I sleek it back in a ponytail? Like, am I going to wear it out in curls? The conversation looks different. And that's why I wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront, because when we talk about reclaiming, it's more of like the transformation of what the code switching looks like. So thank you for sharing that. And last but certainly not least, Dedrick, tell us a little bit about your journey in corporate America and being your authentic self.
Sure. Thank you, Nicole, Morgan, and the other panelists, and thank you for those who are in attendance. My journey is probably a little different than some of the other panelists, probably because of some of the mistakes. Listening to Giovanni took me back a couple years and made me realize that true statement that he said, sometimes, we're not mature enough to accept the gift and the benefits of the feedback. And I am definitely one of those persons. Coming out of college in 1990, so I'm dating myself. The landscape was a lot different then, and excuse me. I started out in banking, which obviously is very conservative. And at that time, it was a older, white male dominated industry, and still is for the most part. And I thought that as a young, hot, professional, my intelligence and all of that was going to be enough, and I could just bulldoze myself through just based off of me, not realizing that if I bulldoze or try to bulldoze my way through, I'm going at it by myself. And the other people who look like me and the other people who eventually, could or will benefit, they'll step aside and allow me to go out there by myself and hang myself if I'm not prepared to be the Lone Ranger. And so I didn't accept the feedback. I thought being the Martin Luther King of the movement was something that everybody would join in, but at the time, people just were not prepared. And a lot of times, what I realized that trying to be or stand out I wasn't being authentic, because I'm not one who wants to stand out. I wanted to not conform is what it really came down to. And there's a difference between wanting to stand out versus not conform. And I went about it the wrong way, and thinking that I could, and true story, I was in a banking management training program in 1994. So imagine the time. And I went to work in this training program one day with a jogging suit on, because I thought I could do that just because I was a young, hot, Black guy, and I was only one of two, and everyone would accept that, not realizing that, it's a slow turn. It's a battleship, in a small lake, and it's not going to turn as quickly as I thought it would. And I ended up making some really bad mistakes until I realized that even as a person who's representing his authentic self, I still have to be very intentional about my representation and think about what are the ramifications of being my authentic self, and how am I going to, and I use air quotes, defend being my authentic self when the opportunity comes, because it will come. It may be a direct question, or it may be a side conversation, but at some point it's going to come back. And how am I going to defend and justify? And I hate to use that word, but you feel like you have to justify who you are and what you've done. So all those things need to go into being my authentic self. So it's been a slower journey to who I've become, but I had to realize that I need to think about my resources and what is really my end game in being this authentic person.
Thank you for sharing. And for those of you that are listening in, again, thank you. But what I want to just point out about this panel right here is while we're talking about being our authentic selves, as you just heard, we all have completely different journeys. Those journeys are different. Those experiences are different. We are at different places in our career. So I love the diversity that is on here, but our journey is our journey. And we need to respect everyone's journey, right? So where I am in me being my authentic self is probably at a different place where Alicia is in being her authentic self. And all of our journeys and where we are in all of our places right now is okay. So the next question is all about organizations, right? So all of our panelists here, they are FAIR firm members. So what that means is that all of these firms and associates represented today are really leaning in to support FAIR's mission, which is to change and transform the landscape in the financial services industry by increasing racial diversity and recruiting more racial talent into this space. But for me, I think we all have strong names on here. Nationwide, Franklin Templeton, Osaic, Prosperitage. We all have strong names on here, but so getting the talent is easy, right? Retaining the talent is the challenge, right? And so the question is, what can organizations and allies do to create an environment where employees feel safe to be their authentic self, but not only safe, that also, I love how we put that B at that end of a sense of belonging as well. So let's talk a little bit about company culture, the importance of that, and things that organization and allies can do to help people feel comfortable with being their authentic selves. So I will start first with Giovanni.
Sure. So thanks for the question. I think that it really does start with your organization's culture, right? And so I think you build community, you build authentic interactions by creating a workplace that supports and stands that up. And so here at Nationwide, we leverage our associate resource groups in a real way to create communities across all lived experiences. So I'll tell a quick story here. So I'm a founding member of the first ARG at Nationwide. Actually, before we had associate resource groups, I'm a founding member of 12 other African-American men who started a group called Corporate Connections. And the intent of that group was to create a space for men, African-American men, to connect, to provide coaching and development and counsel along the journey. And 21 years later, over 300 associates across Nationwide, more than close to over $250,000 raised in scholarships, and countless community engagements is an example of the type of culture that I think creates community. We have 16 ARGs today here at Nationwide across all lived experiences that allow associates to connect in community. But not just connect in community. I think it's important for associate resource groups to not just connect amongst their constituents, but also to serve in the space of accelerating business outcomes. So I think culture in the space of outcomes, there's an intersectionality there that we have really leaned into, because I believe that at Nationwide and any place for that matter, having diverse perspectives, points of views, backgrounds is going to elevate business. And we've seen that happen. And so amplifying that through our 16 ARGs has allowed us to do that. And the last point I'll make here is really around the marketplace, right? So when we think about the marketplace that we all are operating in, it's changed and it continues to change. And not having a point of view or perspective at the table around how you're going to market will impact how profitable you are. So for any of our companies, I think having a growth mindset and creating frameworks that allow that to accelerate has to begin and end with the people, and the people have to be aligned to a culture and a values construct that supports all voices, that values all perspectives, and that allows everyone to be seen.
Thank you for that, Giovanni. And I will just, put a testament, because a little bit about my background, I spent around 15 years at Nationwide. And I will single-handedly say that if it wasn't for those associate resource groups, if it wasn't for that sense of community, that sense of network, that sense of feeling of a sense of belonging, I don't know if I would be sitting in this seat today. So I just want to underscore the importance of having that sense of community. So staying on that same track, Alicia, can you tell us a little bit about what Franklin Templeton is doing to create that culture for their employees?
Yes, thanks, Nicole. I have the privilege of serving as the global lead for our Black Empowerment Network here at Franklin Templeton. And we have several BRGs, 8+ that service kind of all of the different employee backgrounds here at Franklin Templeton. And when I first joined the company 7 years ago, and I was approached with the opportunity to participate in our Black Empowerment Network, I admittedly was incredibly reluctant and hesitant. I was very open to joining Black empowerment groups, in school or in college, but that hadn't crossed over yet for me in the workplace. And so I was very nervous at first with joining the Black Empowerment Network at my job, because I didn't really know how to bring both elements of myself to work. And then I started to hear the stories from my other Black peers about work environments in the 90s when they were first starting in their careers. And that's what got me really on fire and motivated to want to create a space where all Black employees just felt comfortable showing up to work, being themselves. And so the BRG initiative at Franklin Templeton has really taken off, and I'm super proud to be a part of it within the BIN group specifically. We have a 4C approach. We focus on 4 core initiatives to our group, which is around career initiatives, commerce initiatives for the business, community initiatives, and most certainly culture. And one of the ways that we kind of incorporate, propel these things throughout the entire global enterprise is around that element of education. And so in conjunction with a number of the BRGs within the organization, we launched what was called an internal inclusion education series, where each of the BRGs created content that would educate the entire enterprise, as well as new incoming employees once they get hired into the Franklin Templeton organization, about the BRG and about the community. So in ours for BIN, the Black Empowerment Network, we talked about biases. We talked about the truth behind the Black Lives Matter movement. We talked about things that were relevant to our community so that culturally there won't be any, we could limit misconceptions about the Black experience in the workplace. And the feedback that we got from our colleagues in India and Poznan and South Africa and Hong Kong about the Black experience was just so uplifting and encouraging, that education is vital to helping colleagues who don't have the same experience in their homeland understand the really unique cultural facets of different communities. And I was honored to work for a company that supported us doing that and promoting that. And so we take opportunities to leverage our company's social media page to highlight Juneteenth, to highlight Black History Month, and different themes that relate to our community. And I think that it just has emboldened me to get really adamant about it, because one experience that I will never forget is that when I joined the sales organization, one of the leaders was an older white gentleman, asked for an icebreaker around the room. I was the only Black person in that room who was a new hire. I was the only female in that room. And the icebreaker was to go around the room and everyone share, who is your favorite rock band artist? It's the assumption that I listen to the same type of music as everyone else. And I'm sure that it never occurred to him that he would have an employee come, like that's just a normal question for him. And of course I said like Daryl Hall and John Oates or something, just to like fit in. I wasn't fully myself yet. But I took that experience with me, like, no, you should have just said like CeCe Winans and like left everyone stunned, because that is your favorite music artist. She's not a rock artist. So I took that with me and I use it in everything that I do to just be bold about acknowledging cultural differences.
Thank you for that. I love that story on the end and how you caught yourself in, the code switching mode. Like, oh, let me just think of, because you mentioned the rock name and I was like, I've never heard of that name before in my life. You asked me who my favorite rock is, going to be Beyonce, and it's going to be Beyonce all day. She probably about to be in the genre anyway, so it's still going to be Beyonce. But thank you for sharing that story. So, Dedrick, tell me a little bit about your organization and what allies can do to help create a safe space for employees.
Sure. Thank you for the question. My organization, I would think it's probably a little bit behind the curve. But because of people such as myself, Aisha Adams, who's a strong driver within our organization, we've now began to embrace the importance of diversity, the importance of telling our story, the importance of bringing others along. If we look at the racial makeup within our organization, the higher you get up the food chain, the lighter it gets. And I think we've done a poor job historically of presenting our organization as a place for a career. It was a place for a job, but not necessarily a place for a career. And very few people of color looked at it as a place to build a career and to stay there for years. I've been there for 21 years, and many people don't last that long because they just look at it as a job. But we've now begun to build communities, launching, 3 affinity groups, and I'm kind of reading some of the things. Black women, working parents, launching diversity councils, funding CFP scholarships for Black advisors. That's been one of our big initiatives to create opportunities and awareness around there's a large population of underserved people of color who don't understand or haven't been introduced to financial wealth, and they feel more comfortable dealing with an advisor of color. So we've begun aggressively bringing those types of things to the forefront of leadership, because again, if no one speaks up, then the people at the top don't know what the needs are, or even if they do know what the needs are, they don't, ignore them because it doesn't appear as though it matters to anyone else. So we've also been cognizant of the types of representation we have at national conferences where we bring all of our financial advisors there. We demand that there is an awareness of who the speakers are, what the speakers represent, who the entertainment is, and what the entertainment represents. And we've had Earth, Wind, and Fire, and we've had people who sing country, but we have to get them to understand that it's not just as Alicia said, it's not just the music that you listen to, it's not just the motivational speakers that you subscribe to. There's a whole population out there that other people subscribe to, and so don't forget them. For example, our national conference this year, we have Shaquille O'Neal there. Now he's not a financial advisor, but he's an entrepreneur. He's a big personality. He's an encourager. So things like that, we've asked the leadership to start moving the needle in that direction and start adding more diversity there, more color and more inclusion, and just more awareness that there are people, a smaller subset, but they still have to be acknowledged and catered to a degree.
Thank you for
Nicole,
that.
I would love the kind of
You were next.
point that Dedrick made. I mean,
Go
I think
ahead.
that CFP scholarship is so important because one of the biggest barriers is just having enough runway to be successful in this industry.
Yes.
It takes some time. We're 13% of the population, but less than 2% of CFPs are Black. And so, there should be 7 times at least as many Black CFPs out there able to serve communities that look like them. And I think about, the point that you made about how important it is to see people that look like them. I remember driving my kids to school, and there was little, 7 at 7 questions or whatnot, and they asked who the first Black president was. My daughter, or I think my son was like Barack Obama, and then my daughter was like, "Nah, he wasn't the first. There had to be somebody before him," because that's what they knew. That's what they had seen. And when you see Black advisors, and when you see Black professionals, you see Black investment advisors, and you see Black people, then you think that it is something that is attainable to you as well. And then also just showing how many different ways there are to work in this industry. I know when I was growing up, I thought that you had to be an investment advisor. You had to go out to Wall Street and pick stocks. And I've learned the more and more I've been around that there are dozens, if not hundreds of different fields that there are. So I think that the more that we are able to show the next generation that there are opportunities in this industry to be successful, and then provide them with the support that they need, not only financially, but going to these conferences. I'm in a mastermind with another advisor, and I asked him if he was coming to a conference, and he was like, I can't really afford it. And I said, well, ask. I was like, you haven't asked them, they have the money. And he asked, and they said yes. And I think that that support that you guys are providing is so integral to increasing the diversity, so that we can increase the reach of the people that we're trying to affect.
And I want to thank you for pointing that stat out in regards to the CFP, and thanks to all of our wonderful firm partners represented here on this panel and those that are not. FAIR actually has a scholarship set up with the CFP. It's called the FAIR CFP Diversity Scholarship. It is for diverse candidates to go out and seek and get their CFP. And so thank you for underscoring the importance of obtaining that designation. I do want to just pivot a little bit because we have a great question in the chat. So Dawn asked, how do you decide which microaggression to let go versus call out?
Mhm.
Since I saw Brian shake his head, do you have a response on this? And then you can jump in, panelists, wherever you feel the need.
It's tough, and I feel like I'm probably the last one to ask, because again, I left kind of the corporate world to start my own firm. What immediately came to mind to me was, I remember being in office, and I think I might have shared this, Nicole, when we were talking, when George Zimmerman wanted to sell the gun that he had murdered Trayvon Martin with, and the other advisors in the office. It was just a capitalism argument to them. Like they did not understand the humanity of this boy. And so, like, when you said microaggression, like, nah, I felt pretty aggressive, like when I like in that conversation. And so I try not to engage, honestly. It's probably not the best answer. I'm sorry. I think it was Don who asked it. Um, I tried to get them to realize it, and when I realized it was a losing argument, I just found another place to hang out with. So it's tough. Luckily, I don't have hair, so I don't have to worry about that. But I don't know that I have a great answer. I'm sorry.
No problem. Any other panelists have any advice for Don? And I'm going to take this too. Don,
I
I
would-
love the question because I'm tuning in and listening too, because I don't know. I'm still struggling with that.
Well, I'll jump in here. So and Brian, thank you, my friend, for I love your answer, because I did think someone did type in the chat. There is no right or wrong answer here. I think it really depends on where you are along your journey. I feel that we all have a responsibility to step outside of what is normative for us. I'll say that again. We all have a responsibility to step outside of what is normative for us. And so when individuals don't step out of their normative, what happens is just that. These aggressions that come out because they have not stepped out of what's normative for them. And so for me, when that happens, I always seek an opportunity to have a conversation. I think having a conversation about what just occurred and how I felt about what has occurred is important. And I think that you have to, in your journey, be in a place where you can do that in a productive way. And what do I mean by productive? I mean having a discussion that's not accusatory, right? That's not um, infused with anger, but rather a conversation that really understand where did that come from? Where's the perspective that you are foundationing your statement or your approach from? And what I have found is when you have those conversations, a lot of times these things happen out of ignorance. They happen because folks have not stepped out of their normative. So I think it is important for us to not walk away from conversations. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons why culture is so important to organizations that are transforming their workforces. The reality is that, inside of 10 years, 70% of homeowners will be Hispanic, 30% will drive our automobiles, right? Today, 30% of the workforce is LGBTQ plus. 1 in 7 employees are neurodivergent. So the reality is we all have to start stepping outside of what might be normative for us to appreciate and understand the perspectives that show up and come up inside of the workplace. And having a conversation, I think, is a really good start to addressing, right, that's not okay. And you can do that by giving the gift of feedback. So
Open the gift.
I care enough in those situations to give the gift. And they might not necessarily like the gift itself, but the box is always going to be nice, right? The box is always going to present it in a way that they're going to receive it. Now, when they open it up and realize what it is, they might not be mature enough or ready for what's inside the box, but it's been given. And I think that's the first step, is to give the gift.
Thank you for that. Any
I
other
just want-
perspectives?
Yeah,
Go
I just
ahead.
want to weigh in just a second. And I'm looking at some of the comments, and I really appreciate what people are saying. I agree that they need to be called out, but I just always I'm always sensitive to the intent, your purpose for calling it out, because sometimes, in calling it out, you become the aggressor, or you're viewed as aggressive for calling it out. And at times, and if your approach makes you the aggressor, or you're seen as the aggressor, then you've kind of turned the finger back to yourself, and now it goes off of what the original topic was, and then it becomes, did you see how he responded, in that situation? Did you see how he addressed him? He was so aggressive. He was wrong. Derek was wrong for going to him, like that, or talking to him in front of everybody. So I always think about, what is my intent? What am I trying to solve or resolve? And what's going to happen once I confront this microaggression? Do I now become the leader of the pack, and now every time something comes up, they turn to me, and do I want to be labeled as that person? I don't want to be the leader for every issue that comes up, and I don't want to be known as the one to go get him. He'll take care of it. He'll handle it. I don't want to be that. So I always think about those things when, taking on or addressing microaggression or anything out of the norm, where a person or a group is being marginalized. An issue needs to be addressed. I always think about, what's the next step after I address the issue.
Derek, those are, you absolutely, yes. And I think that's why it's so important when we talk about the feedback as a gift, how you present that feedback is so incredibly important. I always think in the same vein of, what is the alternative? Do I walk away and say nothing? And what does that perpetuate from a culture standpoint? What does that amplify, right, from a value standpoint? And so for me, I absolutely agree. It is really about how you do it. And if you do it with the intentionality, to your point of my intent, what is my intent? My intent is to provide feedback based on my lived experience, right? And I care enough about the conversation. I care enough about you in the moment to share that perspective from my lived experience. Because you see, I believe that, in all of our businesses, we have a responsibility to, tackle difficult challenges, right? Whether they are performance challenges, whether they're, target or goal challenges, they're resource challenges. And I believe that at the heart of all of our businesses lies the people who activate the culture, the values, the business. And we have to, at some point, Dedrick, and I agree, you have to be in a place where you can do that. I think the obligation holistically here is that when you feel that you are a part of a discussion where you feel offended and where you are uncomfortable, that you should, in position, given the right perspective in terms of my intent, be ready to have that conversation. Because the alternative suggests, right, that I'm just not going to deal with it, but I guarantee you it's going to come up again.
True.
Yep.
Very true.
Thank you all for the perspectives. I see the chat is on fire, so keep the comments going in there. And we actually have another question in the audience. So panelists, feel free to jump in here. I won't call anyone out. Did you feel that you were able to become more authentic as you rose within your career? And do you think that entry-level employees have built the social capital to be their authentic selves in the workplace?
I'll jump in real quick and I'll skip right out. I think that for me, I will articulate that, being comfortable as my authentic self was not directly attached to me growing in stature here at Nationwide. For me, it was creating a community with individuals who had developed and grown professionally, but wisdom is a significant gift when you are younger. Having individuals around you who could provide you with perspective that was based on life experience, professional experience, personal experiences, that wisdom for me affirmed who I was, validated that I had the gifts, talents, and skills to do the best work possible, right? And I had the support, right, that said, hey, you're not in this by yourself. You can make it, you can do it. And so for me, having a community around you allows you to amplify that earlier in your walk. So that's why I go back to the opening comment that having a trusted board of directors around you will give you the confidence, will ensure through wisdom that you have the competence, right, to do the work ahead. So for me, it's not, it did not grow along the lines of my professional development.
I was just gonna say, I think that there is an important distinction to be made when we're talking about authenticity. So like, I think Dedrick was being authentic when he showed up with the sweatsuit to the retreat, but he just didn't understand the assignment. Like, that's not the proper attire. The same way it wouldn't be if he went to church, the same way it wouldn't be if he was at the beach. I think that we could be I'm my authentic self. And when I'm with my boys and I'm on a golf course, maybe my language is a little looser. I'm still my authentic self when I don't curse in front of my kids or when I don't do it in front of my grandmother. So I think that there's a difference between being authentic and then understanding that in certain places, in certain environments, around certain people, that there's a different expectation.
Yes.
So I think that that's important, because I think that I absolutely wouldn't show up with these glasses and this nose ring in these years ago in my career. So that's a little bit different than, I think, some of the microaggressions, some of the things that we are forced to switch our codes because the environment is not welcoming of what our authentic selves or voice might look like.
Thank you, Brian, for bringing up that point. And I'm just going to make the connections between what Giovanni said and what Brian said. When it comes to being your authentic self, I always think about it, and I use this analogy a lot, is if I'm invited to a gala, right? I'm Nicole Ridley was invited to the gala, and I'm going to go as Nicole Ridley. Now, is Nicole Ridley going to wear leggings and a sweatshirt to the gala? No, I'm going to put on my finest attire and I'm going to go to the gala, but I'm still going as Nicole Ridley. And where I want to make those connection points is Giovanni brought up a good point around mentorship. And when we talk about climbing the ranks, you know, when I was at Nationwide, I was not even in a people leader role, but I was getting comfortable with being my authentic self. And that level of comfort came through mentorship, where I saw my mentors, and I put in air quotes, code switch, and how they code switched, right? It was funny. We had a board meeting on Wednesday, and my marketing team was on the board meeting, and I was presenting. I was in a board meeting atmosphere, and we had a meeting this morning, and they were like, "Oh, like you two different Nicoles, right?" Like I was buttoned up, I was like all in, and I was, you know, hair done, you know, nice collared shirt. And marketing is typically seeing me in my sweatshirt and my hoodie. And so he saw that effect of the code switch in a sense, but I was dressing for my environment. I was at a board meeting. I'm not going to come in a hoodie. And I got comfortable in that space, learning from my mentors and watching how they entered different spaces, how they entered different rooms. But I was like, they're still the same person. They're just in a different environment. So threading those connections around being your authentic self in the right solution, almost understand what the assignment is. And that's how you show up. And then also the importance of, you know, having that mentorship, having that board of directors, having that network so you can, you know, sit back and watch how they move in throughout corporate. So again, thank you for that. And so I love to always end, we're coming up on time, and I want to make sure that I give everyone on this panel space to answer our last question. I love to end it with, you know, there was a number of nuggets dropped here. And I see that, again, the chat is on fire, but I want to leave everyone with a call to action, some actionable items. And so what is one key takeaway that you want to leave with the audience today? I started with Brian, I ended with Dederick, so I'm going to start with Dederick and end with Brian.
Oh, wow, I get to go first. I love it. Again, thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you for those who have joined this discussion. And I agree that the comments are really, really good and the questions are great. One piece of feedback I would say, understand the difference between, again, being your authentic self and trying to make a point. Those are two different things, because trying to make a point is in that moment, but authentic self is representing who and what you are at all times. And trying to make a point only lasts momentarily, but being authentic, it carries throughout your life, and other people can latch on to the authenticity, and people know when you're not being authentic. It just comes out. It's like a flashing light. But when you're being your authentic self, people notice it, and they don't always say it, but it's the subtle head nod, it's the wink, it's the, okay, I see you. I see you. That's being authentic, because you're not changing what you are and who you are. It's already in you. Continue to be your authentic self. Making a point is just, again, it's just for the moment. It's for the feedback. It's for the gram. It's for all of those things. But again, know who you are. Continue to be who you are. Understand the room, the situation, the environment, and still be your authentic self. But you just have to tweak it, change it a little bit. Just like you just said, Nicole, you were still yourself. You were just buttoned up, hair down. That's no different than the one who had the t-shirt on, but understanding what the environment is, what the situation is, and making sure that you are appropriate for the situation. Appropriate doesn't mean you are stale like in looking like everybody else.
Thank you for that perspective. Alicia.
Thanks, Nicole. One thing that I would say to leave the group with, I don't know if you guys have seen, but recently LeVar Burton, the figure for the Reading Rainbow franchise, was talking about his experience on Netflix and everything. And one of the things that he said that stood with me as he was recounting his experience was that, you know, he was talking to the producers and they wanted him to be on the show. And he told them very candidly, if they wanted me, they were going to get all of me, not just the pieces that they thought were palatable or presentable for whatever, you know, episode that he was on. And so that's what I would leave with the group. You are all really talented people when you enter to the workplace and you have your skills and your diverse background and your talents and all these great ideas. And if an employer wants all those great facets from you, they take the whole package. And to be proud to bring that into the workplace, and even if it's unfamiliar for people at first, be bold and know that your value add is your entire package. So let them have all of you.
Thank you for that. And Giovanni.
Nicole, thanks so much. And again, great time with this great congregation of hearts and minds. I appreciate you all so much, and we have to stay connected. Wow, there's so much here. I'm going to try to end. I'm going to run up on time. So here at Nationwide, we believe we protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. So I guess what I would leave with you is protect who you are with extraordinary care. Value the gifts and talents that you have with extraordinary care. Listen, seek, and take in the advice, counsel, and wisdom from those who have gone before you with extraordinary care. And when you do that, I believe you show up, you understand how you show up, you understand how you deploy those gifts and talents in a way that's going to absolutely change the marketplace in which we're all in. So go forth, conquer, do it inside of who you are, and make sure that you exhibit extraordinary care. Grace, give yourself grace along the way.
Giovanni, if you need a side hustle, I need somebody to help me with these sayings for my t-shirt business. So
I was gonna get them on tape. Like I could just use these affirmations or a podcast. I could just use these anytime, put them on the wall, something.
Yeah, I'm joining his virtual church. I don't
Yeah. Now I gotta go after that, man.
Oh God, Brian, listen, you've been talking all day, so you're good, my friend. Yes.
And last but not least, Brian.
You know, I really appreciate, Nicole, you putting this panel together, you know, hearing Giovanni and Dedrick's stories. Like I can't help but think how impossible it would be for me to even be where I am if it was not for you know, gentlemen like them really, you know, leading the way in the shoulders that I stand on. And it took me a long time to really start to reach back out for help, to start to realize that there were clearly people who had come before me. And for as smart as I thought that I was, there were probably people that can help me. And my greatest growth is when I started giving myself the grace to realize that I did not know everything. And so I would just encourage everyone to seek out a mentor, seek out a community, because it can be a lonely journey. It can be lots of ups and downs, and it is a lot better when you have someone that you can fellowship with. So if you don't have one, seek one out. And if you have one, there's no rule that says you can't have more. So find the help and the people that are going to help you be your greatest self.
Thank you for that. And I want to again thank all of my wonderful panels. I think, you know, Aisha said it best. Wow, that hour flew by fast. But thank you for joining us today. I do want to leave, if you enjoyed this conversation, FAIR is going to be putting out more webinars. And if you are a in college in a HBCU, you know, rising sophomore, junior, senior, or even a young professional, or a firm who wants to get involved in joining the cause, I encourage you to go to thefair.org and learn more about our organizations. And for those who want more content, this is just the iceberg of what we were going to be talking about at our signature event, HBCU Live, which will be held on September the 18th on Howard University's campus. It's a one-day conference. It's free. There is no registration, and we will be delving deeper into topics like this. So I encourage you all, visit thefair.org, firms, organizations, to learn how you can be a part of the cause, students, young professionals. We've got great content rolling out. So please follow us in all of our handles and register for HBCU Live 2024. This is a conference that you do not want to miss. We're going to have that HBCU flair. We're going to have some good panel speakers, keynote speakers you don't want to miss. So thank you again, and stay tuned to our website, our newsletters for more insights of when the next webinar will be. Thank you and have a wonderful day.